Well, I'm sorry if I scared you. I just had to show you one of the best sci-fi action horror movies of all time. I had to play it and hope things didn't get too rough for you to finish it.
Michael, you did okay. I loved it.
You did?
Oh yeah.
Aliens was written and directed by James Cameron, released in 1986. Hold on. Aliens was written and directed by James Cameron, released in 1986, and it was a direct sequel to one of the best sci-fi horror movies of all time, Ridley Scott's film Alien, released in 1979. Now in this video I'm going to go over the special edition version of Aliens, and why it's not only one of the best sci-fi action horror movies of all time, but definitively the best alien film in the franchise, and quite possibly in what it achieves, the best sequel ever made. Now you're gonna have to trust me in this video, just go with what I'm gonna lay out. I'm gonna prove to you exactly why all of that is true.
I say we grease this rat fuck son of a bitch right now.
So just roll with me on this video, and if you agree with what I proved to you, comment your opinion below, and if you disagree, also comment your opinion below on why I'm wrong. I'm not though, but let's get into it. Alright, so just a brief summary of the plot here for the few freaks who haven't seen Aliens. You know what, I'm not even gonna do that. Just stop watching this video and go watch Aliens Special Edition, then come right back here. Okay, this video is not my opinion, it's reasoned fact. And you need to have seen the movie before you watch this to get the most out of it. No! Okay, well, the younger generation has a small excuse for not seeing it, so for their sake, if they happen to be watching and don't want to watch the movie, whatever, here's a brief summary of the plot. 57 years after surviving the events of the first film, Alien, in which she defeated a vicious alien that killed the rest of her crew, Officer Ripley, played again by Sigourney Weaver, awakens from the hypersleep she was in due to a salvage team finding her ship, and while being debriefed tries to warn anyone who will listen about the predators.
Crew member Kane, who went into that ship, said he saw thousands of eggs there. Thousands.
Thank you, that will be all.
God damn it, that's not all! Because if one of those things gets down here, then that will be all. Then all this bullshit that you think is so important, you can just kiss all of that goodbye.
Although she is ignored at first when contact with colonists on the same planet her crew picked up the original alien, LV-426, which was thought safe, is suddenly lost. Ripley is motivated to go with a military team that are sent to investigate and rescue the colonists.
What? A xenomorph.
So one thing that you need to understand about special edition version of Aliens is that it should just be called Aliens, no special edition. The theatrical cut should be called Aliens Executives Wanted 17 Minutes Cut. That's what it should be called. Because when you look at the footage that was cut, all of that footage is important to character development and the experience of the film, mainly being in the suspense, which people look at that and they go, oh, it's just character development, it's just suspense, you don't need it. That's the whole point of the film. If you're really into film, that should never be something that comes out of your lips, unless those added scenes are just bad acting, or something's bad about it. The special edition version of Aliens, none of that. Character development is vital to the experience. It makes you care about the characters, invests you further into the world, and the added suspense basically does the same thing while also making it more entertaining with a bigger payoff because you've had more time to build that suspense. Aliens is more than a movie, more than a film, it's an experience. It's all three of those combined. When you look at movies, that just being a general term, really there's three kinds of moving pictures. Let me just put it that way. There's movies, that's like Commando, Die Hard, Predator. Then there's films, which is basically anything David Fincher makes.
Well, that's a horrible thing to say.
And there's experiences, which all Marvel movies are an example of an experience. And James Cameron is someone who is a master at combining all three of those into one thing, like Aliens. Now there's also multiple examples of these categories being blended in different ways, but James Cameron is just someone who's a master at getting that perfect concoction right of all three of those things. James Cameron literally needs his own video, which I will be doing. There's just too much going on to talk about the greatness of James Cameron. When you compare those three categories, none of them are lesser to the other. They're just different. Commando, Predator, Die Hard, those aren't Oscar-worthy think piece movies, but they're at the top of their game in the movie category, and they're badass, excellent movies. And when you compare that to something like Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, Seven, things that are more in the film category, they're just not comparable. They're different. It's a different thing. And experiences as well. I love Marvel movies, but they're not even movies, they're experiences, and they're definitely not films. Aliens is just a perfect concoction of all three of those elements. That's why, for example, it was nominated and won some Oscars, because it's a film, but it's also a movie, and it's definitely an experience, which is why the added elements of the special edition are necessary. Now, when you look at the scenes specifically that were cut out, it's evident that all those scenes were scenes that could be cut out of the movie and still have it work, still be understood by an audience. And that's because executives and producers were just worried about how long the film was, so they just wanted stuff cut. So it's obvious. All that stuff was basically someone holding a gun to your head saying, cut scenes right now. And you just wanting to make the film still work, those are the scenes you cut. That's what happened. It's not extra scenes, it's not fat, it's the experience. You know, there's a lot of movies that have director's cuts or whatever, and the added stuff really isn't necessary. It doesn't add anything. And if you're a fan of the movie, you still might want to see it. I usually lean to that side. If I'm a fan of it, I want to see more of it. I want to be in the world longer. And that certainly applies to Aliens. But that's not to say that those scenes aren't necessary. They don't add anything. They add everything to the movie. You know, when you look at certain movies, let's just say Commando, for example, you don't want to see John Matrix taking his daughter to Disneyland in a 2.5 hour cut. But what we got in that movie is perfect. That is an example of a movie, a great movie, that is perfect. Doesn't need added scenes. Aliens, not like that. So why is Alien Special Edition the best sequel ever made? That's because it excels in every single filmmaking category when compared to the first one. The first film is no slouch. It's an amazing film. Like I mentioned earlier, it's one of the best sci-fi horror movies ever made. So that's a huge statement to say that the sequel to that film is better than that first film. And that's absolutely the truth. I can't think of a single sequel that excels to the same level as Aliens. Someone can argue Godfather Part 2 or Terminator 2 Judgment Day or something like that. Those are all excellent films, but they don't excel the same way that Aliens does. Now, to show why Aliens is the best sequel ever made and why the special edition version is the only one that you should consider watching, I'm gonna have to go over some scenes pretty in depth and let them play out. And that's hard to do, because when I start watching Aliens, any part of it, I just want to keep watching Aliens. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is character development, and that directly ties into why Aliens is the greatest sequel of all time, and why the special edition is the definitive version of the movie. Because there's a lot of character development in the special edition that was removed, which again just hammers the point that you need that character development in there, as I'm going to go through it and show you. To start off with, we're going to talk about Ripley's character. And the first scene that really shows how her character is doing is the scene where she wakes up and Burke comes in to talk to her. And as the scene plays out, she starts feeling that pain, and doctors start rushing in. And if you've never seen the movie, you don't know that it's a dream. So for all we know, she had an alien in her from the first movie, and now it's about to come out. And that's how the movie's going to start. Obviously, if you keep watching the movie, you'll see that it was just a dream. But what that does is it's a big piece of character development for Ripley, showing that she has massive trauma from the first film, because that's the first thing she does is basically have a nightmare of that happening. And it also is just a good way to start the movie with a suspenseful, horrific scene. And that trauma follows Ripley throughout the rest of the movie, but that's the key piece of her character in this movie, is the fact that she suffered this horrific trauma from the first film. It's kind of funny because probably the biggest piece of Ripley's character development was cut out of the theatrical cut, which is the fact that Ripley had a daughter. As if what happened to her in the last film wasn't enough, now she has a dead daughter to think about. But what that really does is really show the strength to her character later on, because she has all these terrible things that happen to her, and although she's traumatized and she has nightmares, she still pulls through. She doesn't just cower away. And what it also does is let the audience further identify with her, because now they know she's a mother, and because of that you care more about what's happening to her, because a lot of people can relate to that. A lot of people can relate to losing their child, or just the thought of that happening. So the stakes are higher when you see Ripley later on. And it also informs some of her choices later on in the film, and with how she acts with Newt. Later on in the film, she has 2 more interactions with characters that further show what she experienced in the last film, which the first being Bishop. Since basically all she's known is a terrible experience with an android, the fact that Bishop is an android, instantly not a good time for Ripley. And then also, if you've seen the first Alien, the audience probably is not going to trust Bishop either, because he's an android.
Is there a problem?
I'm sorry. I don't know why I didn't even... Ripley's last trip out, the artificial person malfunctioned.
Malfunctioned?
Well, that explains it, and the A2s always were a bit twitchy. That could never happen now with our behavioral inhibitors. It is impossible for me to harm, or by mission of action allow to be harmed, a human being. You sure you don't want some?
Just stay away from me, Bishop. You got that straight?
With events leading up to the Marines and Ripley landing on LV-426, Ripley's trying to convince people how bad these aliens are the whole time, and nobody takes her seriously. There's a scene where she's briefing the Marines, and they're not taking her seriously. She's trying desperately to make them understand this is serious, but of course they're just cracking jokes, and nobody's really worried.
I hope you're right. I really do.
Because
just one of those things managed to wipe out my entire crew in less than 24 hours. And if the colonists have found that ship, then there's no telling how many of them have been exposed. Do you understand?
Another great moment of character development for Ripley is just a little piece that was restored in the special edition, which is right before they enter the colonist compound on LV-426. Ripley has a brief pause before she enters the building, and Hicks asks her if she's okay. It's a small moment, but it really shows again that she's traumatized. She doesn't want to go in there. She knows what's probably waiting for them inside.
Are you all right?
One great scene is when the Marines and Ripley are coming into the compound, and you can see on Ripley's face, it looks like she's seen a ghost, so to speak. She's pale, her eyes are darting around. It's not a good face. It doesn't look like she's having a good time in there. That's just great acting on Sigourney Weaver's part, and great direction. And moving on in the film, another great scene is when they enter the lab, and Ripley sees the facehuggers in the tubes. That's the cement of all her fears and her trauma right there.
Lieutenant Gorman.
The final piece of Ripley's trauma coming to a head is when the Marines are going further into the hive and they come across the colonist who's been cocooned. And they lift her head up and she wakes up and the alien starts bursting out of her chest. And then when you look at Ripley, she's devastated. Her past trauma is coming to a full head right there. She's seeing another chest bursting alien come out of another person. Everything she was afraid of, everything that she didn't want to see, is happening. It's a phenomenal piece of character development and amazing acting and directing. Not only is the scene suspenseful, but it's a very effective piece of character.
Convulsion!
Get back!
There are moment after moment of great character development and acting by Sigourney Weaver. So for the sake of what is already a long video, I'm going to move on at this point. Everything I went over It happens throughout the whole movie. Great acting, great character. So touching on the rest of the characters, they're all well-rounded. Even the characters that don't have very many lines or that you don't even see very well, they all feel lived. All the Marines feel like real people. That's a testament to the actors, the writing, and the direction. As far as the main Marine characters, you have Corporal Hicks, played by Michael Biehn, Private Hudson, played by Bill Paxton, and Private Vasquez by Jeanette Goldstein. Corporal Hicks is just a very level-headed guy who's trustworthy and just gets the job done.
He can't make that kind of decision. He's just a grunt. No offense.
None taken. I say we take off, nuke the site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. Let's do it.
You can tell by his actions he's someone you just want to have around if shit goes down.
Hicks, I'm not gonna end up like those others. You'll take care of it, won't you?
If it comes to that, I'll do us both.
And then you have Private Hudson, played by Bill Paxton, who could easily just be a one-note character that gets annoying, who you just want to die.
Hey, maybe you haven't been keeping up on current events, but we just got our asses kicked, pal.
And technically he is one note, but the way he's presented and used and acted by Bill Paxton, it's perfect for the movie, and he still feels like a well-rounded character that actually would be acting like that in that situation.
Well, that's great. That's just fucking great, man. Now what the fuck are we supposed to do?
And one thing that actually hammers that home is a scene that is restored in the special edition where Private Hudson is bragging about all the weapons that they have when they're drop landing on the planet.
Check it out. Independently targeting particle beam phalanx. Wow! We got tactical smart missiles, phase plasma pulse rifles, RPGs, we got sonic, electronic, ball breakers!
And what that shows is he's just a very obnoxious, overconfident Marine, which does a 180 on the reverse end, still obnoxious, but filled with fear when the team gets devastated by the aliens.
17 days? Hey man, I don't want to rain on your parade. We're not gonna last 17 hours. And they're gonna come in here and they're gonna come in here and they're gonna get us!
This little girl survived longer than that with no weapons and no training.
Why don't you put her in charge?
You better just start dealing with it, Hudson.
And then he kind of does a 180 again and shows that even though he's been filled with fear, he's actually not a coward. And at that point, actually, you should be pretty sad that he's gone because he was just a good character.
Come on, you too! Oh, you want some of that? Fuck you! Fuck you!
James Cameron and Bill Paxton have explained that his character was basically a pressure relief valve, which was very effective use of that character.
He's dead. You dogged me, pal.
And then you have Private Vasquez, who's just a badass female character. Basically, she's the toughest Marine on the squad, even though she's a woman. And you really don't want her character to die just because she's such a good, strong character.
Let's rock! Dead! Wake up, pendejo, man! I'm gonna kill you!
Back off. Right now.
But when she does go, she goes in, again, a badass fashion. She sacrifices herself to help the rest of the people get away.
You always were an asshole, Gorman.
Lieutenant Gorman, played by William Hope, is also a good character. He's shown to be inexperienced and kind of panic in the face of pressure, and potentially gets more Marines killed than was necessary because he wasn't giving orders like he should have been. And shortly after that he gets knocked out, but when he comes to, he kind of redeems himself and shows that he's still a good Marine. He's just human and he made mistakes.
God, where's the phone? Where's the phone? Sergeant Scott, get the fuck out of here!
Bishop, played by Lance Henriksen, is also probably one of the greatest characters of his kind, being an android. He's just so well portrayed by Lance Henriksen.
Do it, Bishop. Hey, not me, man.
Trust me.
He's one 100% believable as an android, and I personally love what James Cameron did with that character and not making him some evil android. And it's actually a good little surprise for the audience, because besides the intro to him with Ripley, where you can see that she doesn't trust him right off the bat, he has a couple moments where you might be suspicious of him, like this scene.
Need anything else? Hello, Bishop. Do you need anything else?
No.
All in all, though, he's just a really great character who has an awesome scene where he gets ripped in half, which I'm sure you've seen already.
Not bad for a human.
And as far as Ripley's surrogate daughter, Newt, not really much to say about her. She just gets the job done as a child actor, and she's utilized well in the film. And then that just leaves Burke, played by Paul Reiser. I think the only character in the history of cinema that you want to die more than Burke is Joffrey Baratheon from Game of Thrones.
It was a bad call, Ripley. It was a bad call.
Bad call.
Right.
These people are dead, Burke! Don't you have any idea what you've done here? Well, I'm gonna make sure that they nail you right to the wall for this. You're not gonna sleaze your way out of this one. Right to the wall.
He's really a great villain character, played extremely well by Paul Reiser, who at the time was known more for comedy, which, I don't know, maybe is the greatest joke of all time, because he's excellent in the role and plays a sleazeball douchebag better than anyone I've ever seen, probably.
It's pathetic.
You know, Burke, I don't know which species is worse. You don't see them fucking each other over for a goddamn percentage.
All right, we waste him. No offense.
No!
One segment from the special edition that gets a lot of flack is the Hadley's Hope scene that shows the colony before the aliens infest it, and it shows Newt's parents discovering the ship and bringing the first facehugger back. With that segment, people like to say that it kills the pacing and the mystery, which only really one of those is true, which it does kill the mystery because you see the colony beforehand and Newt's parents and all that. But for that, you get a lot in return. You get world building, character development, and, believe it or not, added suspense and contrast. Let me break that down a little bit. World building is pretty self-explanatory. You get to see more of the world, the colony beforehand, which does add a contrast to before and after, which is nice. Character development, also kind of self-explanatory. You get to see Newt beforehand and her family, which you might not realize is the suspense part. Now, how does that build suspense? It builds suspense because you see on that planet there is a colony there filled with people, and that segment ends with a facehugger on a colonist and Newt screaming. So having seen that, the fact that they get a distress call and Ripley is told about this and eventually they go on the mission there, the audience gets a chance to see the colony and the fact that it is going to be infested. The Marines don't know that. So that allows you to anticipate and kind of be scared for the Marines, potentially, because you know that it's true. You've seen it already. So what that does is build the suspense. You are anticipating shit to go down. And also the scene of Newt seeing her dad with the facehugger on it, and the screaming, which gets drowned out by the wind. That's just a great scene. One thing I want to briefly touch on in the special edition is the turret sequence. I've heard complaints about that sequence saying that it doesn't add anything to the film and that it slows it down, and that's absolutely not true. What that sequence does, truly, is further add to the suspense by showing the strength of the aliens. Not to mention it's just cool, especially if you were watching this in the 80s, to see these automated cannons just swaying back and forth that just rip apart the aliens. It's a cool scene, but it does have a purpose in showing that the aliens' power is seemingly never ending because they just keep coming and coming.
Next time they walk right up and knock.
Yeah, but they don't know that. They're probably looking for other ways to get in.
There are legitimately so many sequences in Aliens that are incredible. They feature perfect setups to suspense and payoff. And what you need to remember about Aliens is that, yes, it's a sci-fi action film, but it's still a horror film. It's still a sci-fi horror, just like Alien is. It just adds action on top of that. The atmosphere of Aliens is straight from a horror movie. Not only that, but the whole movie is built on suspense. Every sequence, if it's not character development, is building suspense. And Aliens even has jump scares in multiple scenes. And that's what I mean when I say Aliens is a better film than Alien, and the best sequel of all time, because it takes everything Alien had and improves it or adds to it at the highest level that you can imagine for a film. It's not the greatest sequel of all time because of the material per se. It's how it achieves being a sequel, which is better than every other sequel that has been made because it improves the original, which was a masterpiece, on every level. And that also ties into the special edition being the definitive version, because in order to say that statement, for it to be true, you have to use the special edition version of Aliens because it is the definitive version of the film. The film has multiple sequences that emphasize this and showcase it. One sequence that really shows the horror to the film is when Ripley wakes up next to Newt under the bed, and you see that the two facehugger tubes are on the ground, kind of just wiggling, so you can tell that the facehuggers just recently got out of there. And Ripley instantly knows that there's facehuggers in the room, which obviously that's not a good thing. And that's instant horror right there, with suspense building all the way up until they're finally revealed with, what do you know, a jump scare.
They're coming, Newt.
Another sequence that showcases the horror and the suspense probably to the highest level in the film is when the aliens cut the power and the Marines don't know what's going on, surprised that the power was cut, and then the motion detectors start going off. And speaking of the motion detectors, that has to be the greatest device in suspense building I've ever seen on film. Not only is it a cool device, but the sound effect is iconic, and the way that it builds suspense is just incredible. That scene just builds and builds in suspense and horror all the way up until they realize that the only way that the aliens could be that close to them is either above or below them. And being that it's a roof with movable panels, Hicks checks the roof and that's where all the aliens are. And a great reveal, which also in turn kicks off the main action in the film, which is just a badass scene. Another iconic scene that showcases the suspense and horror and a great character reveal is when Ripley has Newt after she just found her in the hive, and then she runs into the nest full of the eggs and she looks over and sees the alien queen, which again is a way that Aliens improves on Alien. If you've seen Alien, you know the scene where they first discover the room filled with thousands of eggs, and that question might be on some people's minds. It was certainly on James Cameron's mind, on who is laying those eggs, and he gives it to us, the alien queen. And what that scene also showcases is it puts mother against mother, Ripley versus the alien queen. They both want to survive, they both have young that they're trying to protect. Aliens really has a perfect climax. It's action-packed. You see the Queen and Ripley face off, literally battling each other like battle bots or something. It's fucking epic. That scene probably is one of the starkest contrasts to Alien, both in terms to the visual effects that were used to create it, and the fact that it's... In Aliens, you're at the point where Ripley is literally in a robot suit fighting this massive alien queen creature. That's like the pinnacle of what Aliens brings to the table compared to Alien. And I don't know about you, but I'm sure in the 80s, seeing those power walking suits was probably fucking awesome. I know in 2022, when this video is gonna come out, it's still fucking awesome, and we still don't have those suits. So to sum up, Aliens is the greatest sequel of all time. That's because aside from being a sequel, it's just an amazing movie, film, experience on its own. It's one of the greatest sci-fi action horror movies ever made, period. Aside from being a sequel. And when you combine that, it takes everything about Alien and improves it, adds to it, heightens it. Now, having said that, in a very long video dedicated to Aliens Special Edition, there's only one thing left to say.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
Let's roll!